Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bettinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Denver, Colorado. I'm so glad you could join me today. I still am having a little trouble with my eye, so I'm keeping my mug off the camera. I should be back to looking normal maybe sometime next week. So I'll be back to starting off with speaking to you on camera. So what I have for you is this lovely little card using a couple of things. There's the Art in Bloom stamp set, and this is all in the main catalog. So here's the Art in Bloom stamp set, and it's got these pretty flowers. And the thing that's unique about this is the dies and the embossing folder. This is the die, and there's our 3 flowers. And then there is an embossing folder, and there is the embossing folder. And the way this comes is the stamp set is separate, and the bundle is actually the dies and the embossing folder, and it's called Bloom. And so it's more than a 3D, it's actually a hybrid in that when you cut this, your die actually fits on the inside of the embossing folder, and it actually clicks into place. And then you put your paper into the embossing folder here, and it both die cuts and embosses at the same time. And I think this is the only piece that we have like this in the catalog. It cuts out these middle pieces, and you can use it just as an embossing folder, and that's kind of what I've done with this. So I have a white base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. Then I have 2 pieces of gorgeous grape, 4 by 5 1/4, and then I have 2 pieces that are, let's see, 3 3/4 by 5 to layer in both the inside and the outside of our folder, as you can see here. And what I've done is I ran one through this way so that I cut out my flowers, and here I've got my cut out flower pieces, and I cut a bunch of them because I wanted to make sure I had plenty. You know me, I like to have my resources available. And you can straighten up your paper here. It doesn't really matter when you're cutting. And then I ran the folder through again without the die cut piece and got this piece. So this is just like running it through as a regular embossing folder. So I needed 3 pieces of this 3 3/4 by 5, and actually I did these flowers out of just scrap so that I could just cut out the center pieces here. And so there I have my piece that's been die cut, embossed, and then I have the pieces here that I have die cut separately. And I think I ran this through 2 or 3 times just to make sure that I had enough of these flowers to put my card together the way I want. Then you need also a scrap of old olive, and I cut some of these leaves and out of the die here that has this pierced look to them. And here is one, and these look like this when they're pierced out. Oops, that one broke. But you have leaves that look like that. Then I stamped leaves and then die cut them out this way out of the granny apple. So you need a good piece of scrap of the old olive. In this case, it's not the old olive. This is Mossy Meadow. And you get 2 leaves to cut out that way. once you've stamped them. And then there's this little flower here, and it's got 3 little flowers, and I did a couple of runs on that one in the Gorgeous Grape so that I could add these little pieces of Granny Apple, pardon me, I got my colors all mixed up, of my Gorgeous Grape through in these little flowers to just add a little accent to pick up more of this Gorgeous Grape around the edges. And what I did on the inside is I used another one of these beautiful flowers and a couple of leaves and did that. So the inks that I'm using are Gorgeous Grape, I'm using Granny Apple, and I'm using Mossy Meadow, which I have right here. And I used this die, and I cut out this as a banner and then put my stamp, or stamped it and then die cut this out, and then just moved this all the way down and die cut this end out so that it could fit my sentiment, which is Dear Friend. And Dear Friend is in the Art in Bloom stamp set right here. So yeah, this would make a lovely birthday card. This would make a lovely sympathy card. This would make a lovely graduation card. There's just a ton of things that you can do with this. The very first thing I have is this beautifully embossed piece. And I'm going to center that on this card and put that in place. So I'm going to add my seal to the back of this piece, and I'm going to center that on my Gorgeous Grape piece here for the front of the card. Now for the inside of the card, I can take my other white, which is also 3 3/4 by 5, and layer it on the other piece of the Gorgeous Grape to do the inside of my card, and that is all ready to go. Now, these pieces can just be added to the front of my card and the inside. So I'm going to add this piece to the front of my white base. That would make a beautiful wedding card, wouldn't it, if it was just all done in white with maybe some silver accents or gold accents. And I did run through one, let's see if I can find it. I ran through one piece of gold on the embossing folder just to see what it looked like, and isn't that just beautiful? So we'll have to mess with some of the metals with this as well. Okay, so that's now in there. Now I'm going to put my piece on the inside. It's really, once you get your pieces cut and embossed, it's a pretty fast little card. And let me get this open and center this piece on the inside of my card. There we go. And get that put in place. Now then, so what did I do to get this color? Well, I used, let me get a piece of scratch paper, and I've got my daubers. This is this is the big flower here. This one is this one on the side, and then, let's see, I need this one for the front of my card, and then on the inside I did the largest flower, but maybe on this one we'll do a smaller one. So I'm going to put this one on the inside. So what I did was I took my Gorgeous Grape ink and I inked up my, let's see, that's the dark green. Okay, and I'm going to brush a lot of that ink off. I just want a very light hand, because all I did was go around these leaves and add a little bit of color to the inside leaves around the center, And again, I just wanted to get a little bit of color on this. And so I'm going to do all of my flowers like this and just add that little bit of Gorgeous Grape to the flowers. Nothing fancy about this, just get your color down. And you see that time I didn't take any color off, so I've got that one just being a little bit deeper, so maybe I'll add a tiny bit more to my flowers here. And I think that's probably plenty. So then I took on my embossed piece on the card here, okay, and I took a darker green, which was my Mossy Meadow. I'll need this, well, you know what, maybe I'll just go ahead and do that sentiment now that I'm thinking about it. And I have my Dear Friend put on this little block, and I'm going to set that kind of in the center, and it doesn't matter if it's straight or not because I'm going to cut it out with this die first. And what I'm going to do is cut it out like this, and then once I get that cut out, I'm going to put it back in and run it down like this so that I get a shorter sentiment. And there we have our sentiment done. Now, on these flowers, I used two markers. I used the Mango Melody and the Daffodil Delight, and I put the Daffodil Delight down in the center of my flowers, and just like that. And then I added a little bit of the Mango Melody to that and just kind of scribbled a little bit so I'd get the two-tone effect of the colors there on the inside of my flower. And then the last thing I did was I took my black marker and I just added a few black dots to the center of my flowers here. So there we go. All right, now those are all ready to go. And I think we are done with our stamping as well. So now what I'm going to do is add some dimensionals to the flowers that go on the front of the card, but the ones on the inside of the card, I'm going to put down flat, no dimension. There we go. Now I'm going to take, oh, I should have done this beforehand, but I've got my dauber for my Mossy Meadow ink, and I'm going to ever so lightly, you can do this before you ever put this on the card if you choose to, take a lot of that off and just go around and put just a tiny bit of color on these raised leaves around here. You can see this would have been much better to do before I put the other flowers on. So you be smarter than me and do it in the right order. And get some of that darker green on those leaves. And then I used my lighter dauber and I put some Granny Apple Green to brighten up some of those leaves. And again, I'm going to take a little bit off, but then I'm going to go over the top of those leaves and just brighten those up a little bit with that Granny Apple color. Okay, so I had a little break in the video. So I'm back here, I'm trying to pick up where I left off, And I got my dimensionals on my flowers and got those down. And I started to put my leaves on, and that's kind of where I think I left off. So I have got a couple of leaves, and I want to put them on here and have them be right side up. That would be good. And maybe stick a couple of these other darker ones on. I've got my silicone mat, and I'm putting just a little bit of snail on the back side of some of these leaves and putting them in place right in here on my flower. Make sure I've got this card right side up. And I put the flowers on, did the embossing a little different on this one. So it looks like my sentiment is going to go on this side on this one instead of this side, because I've got a break in my flowers over on this side. And what I'm going to do is add just a couple of mini dimensionals on the back of this sentiment and get that put in place, and then finish with my leaves. And so there we have our flowers. And then I have this for the inside, and I have, let's see, these little flowers, and I have to decide whether or not I think they work on this, and I'm going to go ahead and put them on anyway. I think they do add just a little spark of extra color. So I'm going to add some snail to the back of these, and I'm going to stick one right in between those two flowers there, and that leaf, and then maybe add one more perhaps up here at the top. And I kind of like the contrast of adding just a little bit more of the dark purple in there. All right, so now what we need is some kind of bling on both of these. And I'm thinking that maybe these genial gems here and these green sparkly gems just kind of tucked in around a couple of places on these cards. And I'm really talking about using just, oh, maybe 3. There, I think I like the finishing touch that these kinds of items add to a card that just make it look like it's finished. It's like a final exclamation point, if you will. So there it is, and I noticed that I like the way these dots came out on this one, so I'm going to add the darker ones by using the brush tip on my marker instead of the fine tip, and get those little dark pieces in there. And so that is how I'm going to finish that. Now for the inside, I have my little flower, and I'm just going to add a ton of glue and maybe a couple of these leaves right here to this flower, and put that all in place right down here in this corner. And there we go. That is the inside of our card finished. And that is my project for the day. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube studio today. I do so appreciate it. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, well, I'd love to be your demonstrator, or you could join my team. I'm just so in love with this whole idea of this suite. Now, I did try earlier to stamp the flowers with the ink before I ran them through the embossing, and I just think it took away from the beauty of these petals on these leaves. That's why I went back and just used the dauber. And it doesn't mean that this wouldn't work for some kinds of things, but I thought that all of that beautiful detail just disappeared using that ink. And maybe I just need to use a different ink with it. I'll experiment around and see. Let's see, this is still July. So my prize draw for the month of July is the bundle, the Grapevine Design, and that is the stamp set and the die set. And all you have to do to put yourself in my drawing is to put an order of any size on my website, lbettinger.stampinup.net, or you can get to it through my blog, www.inkandingenuity.com. So again, thanks so much for stopping by, and I will be back soon with more cards, more projects, and more tips. Bye!